communicate appropriately what that answer is. Good one. So, if we don't have any more questions, I can actually tell you, like, a lot of people, whenever I'm interviewing them, they always say they do too much, or they take on too much, and they're trying to learn not to take on too much. That's the most popular answer that I get. Does a little bit of job advice though. If you get fired from a job, or you leave it, don't go into a lot of detail about it. Just simply say, I left for personal reasons, and leave it at that. Mm-hmm. Do not go into any more detail. Because most of the time your employer is going to be like, okay. If they want more answers, they'll inquire with you. When someone tells me that, I'm just like, cool. But I do ask them if they were fired or let go from any previous jobs though. I did have one lady who got fired because she threw lab equipment at her boss. She got fired for this 3 times. So.
That seems like a red flag on the resume.
I've been doing this for 5 years, so I've had some stories. Actually, I probably should make an entire panel of candidates that I've spoken to and some of the crap they've said to me.
Recruiting horror stories panel.
I have a ton. I'm also the type of recruiter that if you give me attitude, I will not put you in for a job. And I will tell you bluntly, you need to change your attitude or you're not getting put in. Which one would you like? And I deal with PhDs all day, so they love to give me attitude. The moment they start giving me attitude, I give them attitude right back. You know how quickly that changes them? Instantly. Instant respect. Because they realize they can't talk down to me, so then they change their attitude. So keep that in mind.
I only have a BA.
Well,
I promise I will try not to talk down to
I've hired CEOs who thought they could talk down to me, and then they realized very quickly that they couldn't. And then they gave me mad respect, which is always fun. All right, do we have any actual questions for our guests, though?
These guys are pretty haughty, Doctor.
Oh, my.
Oh, Doc has a question.
Very straightforward question. So, Ursula, why a wombat?
Everybody always asks why a wombat. The hero of Digger was a wombat. And the answer is I was very new to comics. It only just occurred to me that as an illustrator I could draw a comic, and that was a thing I could do. And which should not have been a revelation, but I didn't really grow up reading comics, so it was like suddenly a bolt from the blue. I could just put word balloons, and oh my god, that's a comic. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna do this, I should create a character design that I can draw, because I'll have to draw it a bunch of times. So I was sitting around doodling, I was like, character concepts that I could simplify down, that I could draw them often enough. And I was like, what do I draw? I need something to draw. And I thought it was just practice at the time, and that I was not, coming up with something I would be committed to for the next 8 years and 800 pages. And I happened to have the TV on, and at the exact moment that I was like, what do I draw? A wombat took a chunk out of Steve Irwin's leg. And Steve Irwin, being Steve Irwin, was thrilled. And was telling the wombat how beautiful it was, and it's stomping along, and he's chasing it, telling it it's a beautiful wombat, and bleeding profusely, and I'm like, awesome. So I started drawing wombats. They're fascinating creatures. They're very odd. They have armored rumps, and they get very large. They can weigh like up to 70, 80 pounds, and they I wound up talking to a lot of wombat rehabilitators in Australia, who are, I think if you do wildlife rescue in Australia, you are a special breed of human, because they have some stuff down there. And the wombats, they said, were actually really easy to rehabilitate because they were delightful as babies, they loved people, they were playful, they were smart, they enjoyed interacting, and then as soon as they hit the teenage years, they became extremely surly and were like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to go out into the bush and dig up the foundations of your house. And so you could release them very easily once they hit the teenage years, because they were like just done with people. They didn't get, socialized to live with humans the way that a lot of animals do. They were like, nope, I'm out of here.
So basically an angsty teenager.
Exactly, yes. Except they just sort of continue that for the rest of their life. They're just like, I'm done with people.
A
now.
90s angsty teenager. I hate you, man! And then slam yourself in your room and listen to Three Doors Down.
Yep.
God, that's showing my age. Oh my God.
Limp Bizkit,
Very
yeah.
long back. Here we go.
Well, if someone's going to ask you about your persona, Mars Sparks, how did you come up with yours?
So I'm not gonna lie, it's very weird because I was just like, I took a Myers-Briggs personality test because my mom is a psychiatric nurse. And I was like, she told me about this and I was like, okay, like I'll look it up and then I'll type in whatever it tells me and look it up and see what I get. And it ended up being like, oh, well, you're a dog because you love a lot and you're really stupid, so have fun. So I was like, okay, well, so then I played with the ideas and concepts, and originally what I wanted to be was an Arctic fox because I liked Crystal from Star Fox. I was like, oh, well, I want to make something like that. So I'm not as crazy in colorations, but it's the same color pattern. It's blue and white. And I don't know, I was like 13, so he's pretty plain, but that's kind of what fits my personality, so I just kept with it.
Nice.
Actually, funny thing, I actually got a furry hired on at a job. Yeah, basically I sent out something and he emailed me back, but he emailed me back from his wrong account. So he emailed me back from his furry account, and I saw his icon. I'm like, oh, so I was interviewing him, I'm like, oh, by the way, cool icon. He's like, oh my God, did I email you from the wrong one? I am so sorry. It's like, dude, calm down. It's like, I hang out with furries. You're good. And then he was like so excited. And then like, we had a nice long conversation. Then I got her hired on for $10,000 more than what he was asking for. Because I'm good like that.
Well, let's face it, the furries in tech, if all the furries in the tech industry suddenly quit, the internet would collapse and
That's the reason why they're not allowed on the same plane.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if it goes down, then we're all just screwed. Oh, Kofu has a question.
Run for your life!
I said run, not walk.
Okay.
So,
I'll skip.
okay, that works.
So two questions for both of you. What's your guys' favorite drinks, alcohol-wise? And also, when you think about North Carolina, what do you feel or think what represents North Carolina?
Hello? So as far as alcoholic drinks, I'm partial to a Long Island. It's just an easy go through. But as far as North Carolina, like growing up, because I'm from Hickory, North Carolina, close to the foothills. And I always think of, when it comes to North Carolina, if it's not cheerwine, liver mush, or dogwood trees, I don't know where else I would be. So that's like my main three.
I am fond of tequila, but actually good tequila, not the bottom shelf stuff. The difference between good and bad tequila is probably vaster than any other beverage in the world. The good stuff is amazing. The bad stuff is, yeah, it'll strip paint off, cars, you, walls, cows in nearby fields. Let's see, is it what represents North Carolina? What I think of, well, the two things I think of, first of all, because I'm a gardener, is Venus flytraps. North Carolina and South Carolina are the only place in the world where Venus flytraps are found. They are from here. And they're highly endangered because people like to poach them, and they were always kind of rare and in weird places anyway. So Venus flytraps, and probably red wolves, because we have the I think only wild population of red wolves left in North America, and there aren't that many of them there, but they're there, we have them. So that would probably be the things I usually think of. Well, and I'm not from here, so originally I've just lived here for a decade and some change, so I have kind of a mixed relationship with barbecue, I admit.
North Carolina barbecue is
Vinegar based.
You've been here for over 15 years now, because you've lived with me for 12 years now, 14 years now.
Yeah, I've been here a while. Well, and I still don't really understand the feeling of barbecue, but that's okay. The important thing is you guys have it, and people who love it, and that's what matters.
Definitely do the pulled pork. Oh, we have another question. Doc, go. Go, Doc. Run. Run.
Wow. Okay. Here we go.
That was angry.
This question is for Mark. What is Papa Barks?
Yeah, I did mention that and didn't go fully into explanation. Thank you. So Papa Barks is when I first started. Okay. So basically, Papa Barks is the event that I organize once a year, which is it's all on Twitch. But it's basically when I found out that my father got diagnosed with ALS in 2019. I was trying to figure out how I could, I guess, help him fight that. But this ALS, unfortunately, is a disease that doesn't have a cure. So my immediate instinct was, well, hey, like, you know, all my friends have done charity events. I've done charity events with my friends. So why not start an event that goes to help fight alongside him? So that's how Papa Barks started, which Papa Barks is just the nickname that I gave to my dad. And it's basically, it's on its 3rd year, well, it's going on to its 4th year. We're going to be doing it again next year. But yeah, that's pretty much what Papa Barks is.
Sorry to hear about your dad. Hopefully all this research and all the money that you're getting will help with the cure, or at least be able to help them slow down the disease tremendously.
That's what we're hoping for.
Because unfortunately it does not have any kind of cure, so. Any other questions? We've actually got some pretty good questions so far, so. Anybody else?
I can do one, Mikey.
What question?
This is to both. Very open-ended question. What is your favorite furry-related movie? If you had to call a movie somewhat furry-related, what's your favorite furry-related movie?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I want to follow that up with, after that one, what is your favorite furry-related TV show?
Oh Lord, that is a tough one. I mean, my favorite animated movie is Spirited Away, but I don't know if that's furry adjacent enough. It has a dragon, yeah, and an anthropomorphic radish, which I feel like ought to be worth something. So.
On brand.
Definitely like so.
Yeah, and I really love the radish. So Spirited Away.
As far as the movies go, gosh, it's gonna sound weird. I know a lot of people didn't like the movie, but Bolt the Super Dog was like my inspiration when I first started getting into the furry fandom. And then as far as TV, that's a harder one for me because I can't really think of anything other than like Looney Tunes as far as like stuff that oh no, actually, if any of you watch anime, B&A.
Yes.
B&A is like top-notch stuff.
Brand new animal.
TV show-wise, I mean, there's been so many good ones over the years, but I really enjoyed Amphibia recently. That was really cute and has lots of talking frogs, and which is more slimy than furry, but same. Also, Owl House is fantastic and is sort of quasi-furry adjacent as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I have a question for Mark, since you do play video games. What is your favorite genre?
Favorite genre of video games is 100%. I'm a big fan of strategy games, but I'm not good at them. So I do my best to make it sound like I'm really good to scare people. So that way, whenever they whip me, I'm like, oh man, I clearly like made it so that you had to work harder. When in reality, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just like clicking, poking, shoot things. That's pretty much it.
Personally, my favorite are horror games. Though I've played so many of them, I'm desensitized to them now, so none of them scare me.
Oh my gosh, she's.
Fatal Frame 2
Yes.
had me crying at the end because of the ending. That was one of the very first games that ever had me bawling. Because the ending is just so good, because I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah,
I could talk to you about Fatal Frame all day, because it's one of my favorite horror series.
I started it like at, mid-afternoon, and my husband's like, I'm gonna go up to the bedroom. I'm like, you're not leaving this room.
And then I turned off the lights.
Yes.
I like you. That's evil. I like it.
And we weren't even married yet.
I'm surprised she still married you after that. She should have been like, all right, bye. See ya. Do we have any other questions? So we slated this for an hour, but we don't necessarily have to go for an hour if nobody else has any questions.
I don't have any questions right now, but I do have a funny just snapshot here. So I'm looking at the two guests of honor, lovely guests of honor, looking at Mikey talking, and I kind of have my peripheral just for any raised hands, and I keep seeing the tip of Donkey Kong sticking up. And it's just like, every time I'm like, my question. Oh no, it's just his head. So,
You're like, Donkey Kong has a question.
He has a question. I guess I could have a question.
Okay.
Go back in the memory, way back in the memory. Do you remember what was, to both of you, what was your first furry con, and give me a fond memory from that first furry con?
Mine was Midwest Fur Fest in 2002, maybe? I don't remember. It was very, very long ago, and my fondest memory is I'd never been a dealer at a con before, and people would give me money for art, and many of them knew who I was, and this was utterly baffling because I was just some weirdo who sat in the apartment and painted things, and here were all these people who knew who I was and would give me money for doing it. It's honestly, that still weirds me out a little.
For me, my first one was FWA 2016. I had actually just got back from a deployment in South Korea and then was on a temporary assignment in Savannah, Georgia. Came back and then immediately was like, okay, well now that I actually can go, I'm gonna go. And FWA was 2016 was my first one. And that's where I met a lot of really good friends in my life. And there's a lot of really fond memories, in all honesty. That was probably one of the most meaningful con experiences I ever had, because I got to meet a lot of the close friends that I had in my life there. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well then, let's go ahead and give a round of applause for both of our guests of honor. No. Did you guys want to end with anything? Words of wisdom?
Come to our panels. Come see us at panels. I assume we will be hanging out and say hi.
Yes, pretty much you're both mine for the entire weekend.
So I realized after the fact, because I didn't know, but this con is doing their own scavenger hunt, and I thought it'd be cute to do a separate scavenger hunt.
Oh, wow.
So if you go by the guest of honors table and you see a scavenger hunt, it's not affiliated directly with the con, but there is some fun prizes if you can go through that. Sorry, I completely forgot about that.
Oh, you're fine. All right, before we close out, do we have any other questions? Words of wisdom? Oh, we have a question.
Kind of a flip side to the previous question. What's one of your horror stories of a different fur convention, or the most traumatizing thing that's happened to you?
Okay, this was not a specifically furry convention, and in fact, I believe it was one of those cons where it had started as a general science fiction convention, and then the furry track got so big that everybody else got mad at them and told them to go make their own con, so they did and took 90% of the con with them, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So the sad, tragic remainder of the convention, which is now defunct, so I don't mind saying anything about it, had I knew none of this. They invited me as a guest, and they said they had a kids track and programming track, and they wanted me to draw with kids or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Just make sure, obviously, there is someone there who, who is good with kids, because I write kids books, but I am not, small children, I have no idea what to do with them. They frighten me. They're like, kind of like parrots in that regard. They are very, both extremely powerful and likely to bite, and also I'm afraid if you touch one, their bones will dissolve. So, they were like, yeah, of course. Well, that was not actually quite as true as it could have been. I wound up at the panel, which is like in a room that they have, basically, it was a hotel room. They had ripped the beds out, there was a table, and there were some markers, and they were like, yeah, the guy will be along shortly. And I'm like, okay. And then the door opened, and two parents basically chucked their kids in and left, and I was like, wait a minute, and that is kind of how I wound up babysitting for an hour, going, because the guy never showed up, and I'm like, this is, leaving aside the fact that I'm not good at this, I could have been any kind of weirdo. Do you know the legal liabilities the con would be? Yeah, my God, no, this is a terrible idea. And fortunately, my husband was also there and had been a Cub Scout leader in his youth, and so is able to talk to children, and got them drawing, and they were all perfectly happy. But while I sat in the corner and twitched. Yeah.
Peace.
I have way too many con horror stories. If you see me at other cons, we used to hold panels about the horror stories that we've all seen. Because there for a while, it's all I was doing was going to conventions. But one of the ones that I can tell here, because it's safe for work, there was one specific, when I went to Frontal Equinox the first time, I had an injury from the military where my back was really messed up. And if you've never been to FE, it's in Toronto, Canada, which a lot of the people from Quebec and Montreal, the French Canadians come down, and some of them don't know English. So you kind of have to say hello, and I knew a little bit of French, so you'd be like, oh, bonjour, hi. And that's as far as my conversations would go. But as far as the normal conversations, it's, hello, and then you take photos, and you go on your way. But there was somebody who specifically who really liked my content, but didn't know English. So he ran up and immediately bear hugged me as hard as he could. And I felt so bad because I just started yelling in pain. And he let go, thinking I'd fall, get down on my 2 feet. And I immediately just crumbled on the floor and laid on the ground in front of the hotel lobby for probably about an hour. It was the guy felt so bad, and he was a really nice guy.
Oh man.
Next time I go to Canada, I learned that what the word for stop is in French. So.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so my buddy Foxfeather, who some of you may know on Twitter, has a large farm, and she keeps emus. And she is a lovely woman. She is Dr. Doolittle in human form. And Fox Life Studios, I used to go do a bunch of furry cons. And we were at Furry Fiesta in Texas, and I was a guest. And I will say I don't normally do this sort of thing at cons, I promise. But there happened to be an emu breeder near where we were that had white emus. And Fox was like, I gotta get me a white emu. And I'm like, okay, this seems reasonable. So someone drove from the breeder to Fox with 3 or 4 emu chicks in a large dog carrier. And emu chicks are, they're sizable. But that was Saturday night, and she's like, okay, we're checking out of the hotel, but, so we can drive back Sunday, but we can't just leave emu chicks in the car. That would be terrible. They would roast. And so she's like, well, I guess I'll probably just have to skip Sunday, in the dealer's room. And I'm like, no. You'll lose tons of money on that. They gave me a suite. if you promise me that the emus will not get loose, you can keep the emu chicks in my room.
I can see where this is going.
And she's like, I promise they will not get loose. And I'm like, okay. And the hotel staff will never have to clean up after emu poop. She's like, God, no. All right. The problem is getting a dog carrier from the car up to the suite on the 11th floor was a little more difficult than we thought, because you can't just walk through with an open cat carrier, because people will stop and want to know what you're carrying. And of course, the hotel is not necessarily going to want livestock in the rooms. And so she put them in a box in his carrier, and I had been assured that emus were silent and did not vocalize. And we're standing in the elevator, there's like 3 of us, and the box begins peeping. And there are 2 furries and a businessman who had been staying at the hotel, and they all look at us in the box, and we immediately panic and start trying to cover the peeping noises. And one friend of ours starts sort of singing an aria, and I'm trying to hum Bridge on the River Kwai, and Fox is just like looking like, I don't know these people, I'm just standing here with my box that is peeping. And the furries and the businessman are like, they're obviously in a cult, and they kind of inch away from us a little, and they get off, and we get to my suite with the emus, and we're like, wow, we are not smooth at all. And it was fine. The emus did not get in the vents. No one died. We kept them in the bathtub so that if there were any, spray over events, the staff would not have to deal with it. And the only thing worth noting